Chapter 1. The Fateful Encounter. Lucy. Agatha woke early one Friday morning, her big blue eyes open as usual. Before she could breathe in the crisp autumn air, a cloud of thought had settled over her mind. It was Lucy's habit, a strange alertness as soon as her eyes opened, a restless rush of thoughts, questions, worries began to swirl in her head like waves crashing on a vast ocean. Lucy quickly shook off the tiredness of sleep, trying to get her thoughts off the ground with a conversation. And who would she need at this moment? Midge Hardcastle, her young cousin who had just arrived at the Hollow last night, was the first person she thought of. Lucy decided to go to Midge's room. With her footsteps light, hurried, but no less elegant, like a breeze passing through an old house. When Lucy opened the door, she found Midge still lying on the bed, her eyes slightly closed in a deep sleep. Lucy couldn't wait any longer. She started a conversation in her head, creating both answers and questions, as if Midge was already there, sharing all these concerns with her. "Darling, this weekend is going to be tough, don't you think?" Lucy said, her eyes lighting up, completely oblivious to Midge's surprise. Midge reacted, small squeal escaping her lips as she was abruptly awakened. "It's so early in the morning." "Lucy, don't worry, Midge. The weather is fine. At least that part of the problem won't get us into trouble," Lucy replied, walking to the window and pulling back the curtains, the soft light of dawn falling on her face. "But the people who will be coming this weekend are the real problem." "Human who?" Midge sat up, eyes still half open, slightly dazed. "John and Gerda." "Of course," Lucy answered quickly, but with a hint of worry in her voice. "John is lovely. Yes. But Gerda, she really doesn't understand anything. Midge, and I should feel guilty for inviting her." Midge just looked at Lucy with a silent gaze, as if not knowing what to say. But then she began to realize that something was wrong. Why was Lucy so nervous about a simple meeting? But before Midge could ask more, Lucy continued, as if she didn't notice the hesitation in her eyes. "And then there's Henrietta. She's the only one who can make things easier. Henrietta always has a way of solving problems," Lucy said confidently, although not everyone in the house agreed with her. Midge felt a strange tension in the air. She sat down on the bed, trying to listen to Lucy's story, but an inexplicable feeling kept creeping up on her. Something was wrong, and Midge couldn't help but feel that this weekend was going to be a challenge for all of them. "What's wrong?" Midge asked, her eyes now beginning to clear. "Why are you so worried?" Lucy took a deep breath, then replied with an innocent yet anxious smile, "Because Edward will come too." Midge stiffened. "Edward? Why Edward?" Chapter 2. Pieces of the Past. What had happened between Lucy and Edward Midge felt the confusion settle like a layer of fog over the space around her. She couldn't take her eyes off Lucy, who was slowly emerging with indescribable anxiety. Now, as everyone in the house was preparing for a long day, Midge felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. She looked at Lucy, the girl who always smiled but contained undiscovered mysteries. A deep secret was pushing everyone into a spiral of unpredictable situations, and Midge was the only one who realized that those seemingly harmless words were actually pieces of a terrible picture they had never thought of. The day passed in a haze of uncertainty. Midge couldn't stop thinking about Edward, couldn't forget the name, and the question of what truth it brought lingered like a ghost in her mind. Chapter 2. Pieces of the Past continued. Midge couldn't stop thinking about Edward. She remembered the first time she met him, a man who seemed elegant and intelligent, but harbored a deep sadness that he never showed. Was that why Lucy was worried? Or was there something that no one knew about Edward's past? Something that only a few in this group could understand. Midge spent the rest of the afternoon wondering about the weekend gathering. She could feel the tension in the air, like a ticking time bomb. Everyone was trying to keep things light, but Midge couldn't shake the feeling that something was threatening them, and that Edward's presence was just one part of the intricate game. Dinner came, and the atmosphere in the dining room at the Hollow seemed heavier than ever. The conversations were feigned cheerfulness, but at times there was a sense of tension. Midge sat at the corner of the table, looking around. John and Gerda, though a rather striking couple, seemed uncomfortable together. Henrietta sat silently, her eyes looking far away, as if she were thinking about something more important than the meal. And then there was Edward, who kept a sharp eye on everyone, smiling occasionally, but still looking intently, as if he were searching for something the others couldn't see. Midge couldn't stop thinking about Lucy's story. There was definitely something wrong with Edward's presence on this trip. He was uninvited, but he had shown up unexpectedly. What was the reason for him to show up now? Midge suddenly realized that she was looking at a picture full of cracks that each of them was trying to hide. As dinner ended and everyone rose from the table, a sudden cold wind blew through the open window, making Midge shiver. She sensed a change in the atmosphere. Something dangerous was about to happen. This feeling was even more pronounced when she saw a figure moving quickly past the window, as if someone was sneaking through the garden. There was a strange noise, and for a split second, Midge sensed something was wrong. She stood up and walked to the window, trying to look out, but seeing nothing but darkness. The uneasiness kept Midge from sitting still. She walked down the hall and gently opened the door to Lucy's room, where the silence of the house now made everything even more eerie. "Lucy," Midge called softly, not daring to break the silence too abruptly. "Oh, Midge, you're here." Lucy giggled from inside the room, the light from the desk lamp illuminating her face. Midge was silent. Then she looked into Lucy's eyes, feeling the anxiety hidden deep within. She couldn't help but ask, "Lucy, is there something you don't know about Edward? Why is he here, and has he done something wrong before?" Lucy was silent for a moment, her eyes looking away as if searching for answers from a faraway place. Then she sighed and placed her hand on Midge's shoulder. "You don't understand. Midge, Edward. He has things in his past that none of us can change. And this time, he's not just coming for a simple visit. You'll see. We all will." Lucy paused, her eyes turning sad. "We can't run away from the past forever." Midge could feel the tension in the air. These words were like a warning that Lucy deliberately concealed. A vague feeling of dread began to form in Midge's heart. Was Edward hiding some dark secret? And was it related to the strange events taking place in the hollow? Chapter 3. Deadly Mystery. Things took a turn for the worse the next morning. As the group prepared to go for a walk, little did they know that their walk would lead them to witness an unexpected event. A body was found in the garden of the hollow, in a strange and unexplained state. Although everyone was in shock, something was becoming clearer to Midge. Someone in this group is the culprit, and Edward's presence is the key to unlocking this terrible secret. Will the truth be revealed before things go too far? Chapter 3. Deadly Mystery continued. That day, as the group prepared to set out for a stroll around the vast gardens of the hollow, the atmosphere seemed light and peaceful. But inside Midge, a feeling of unease was growing fierce. She could not forget Lucy's warnings. Something dark was lurking around the house, and she sensed that the death in the garden was no accident. As the group walked to the back of the house, Henrietta, who always appeared calm and composed, suddenly stopped. She pointed to a dense area in the distance. "There's something there. I feel—" Henrietta didn't say anything more, but her eyes said it all. Midge and the others followed Henrietta. As they approached the spot she had pointed to, a gruesome sight came before them. A body, slumped under an old tree. The dead man was one of the hollow's gardeners, someone none of the group could recall meeting many times. Strangely, however, his body bore no visible wounds, only a surprised expression, as if he had died in the middle of trying to say something important. "Oh my God, what is this?" Midge gasped, feeling her stomach tighten in panic. "No way!" Lucy exclaimed, stepping forward, looking stunned. "Why him? He's the one who keeps this garden in order." While everyone was panicking, John Christou, with cold and calm eyes, walked closer to the body and examined it carefully. There were no external injuries, no obvious signs of him being murdered. But it seems that this death was not normal. "So, how did he die?" Gerda asked. Her voice choked with fear. John shook his head. "This isn't an accident. This death seems to be related to something mysterious. Maybe a toxin." Midge looked around, and then her eyes fell on Edward, who was standing silently in a corner, far away, as if observing everything. She felt a sudden fear when she noticed that he was very quiet, unlike his usual self. Did he know something that the others didn't? The unease grows as Midge feels a strange and dangerous presence in her heart. Could this death be connected to secrets they don't know about the past of the group members? Or is there a killer lurking in this house? Chapter 4. Secret Investigation. After calling the police and leaving the body to the experts, the group went back inside the house. The feeling of confusion still prevailed. Everyone in the group looked worried and tense, but no one dared to openly admit the fear in their hearts. Midge could not take her eyes off Edward. His silence was strange. He did not appear afraid or surprised by the death. On the contrary, he seemed cold, as if he knew what was going to happen. Lucy pulled Midge into the living room, her eyes searching for comfort. "There's definitely something serious going on. Midge, none of this is random. Why are we having a death in our family right now?" Midge looked at Lucy, her eyes filled with concern. "Lucy, do you think someone in this group did this?" Lucy was silent for a moment, then looked deep into Midge's eyes. I don't know, but I have a feeling. We're all being watched. Something from the past has come back. Midge felt a chill run down her spine. She couldn't deny that some strange signs were beginning to appear. Strange conversations, meaningful glances, and inexplicable events were slowly forming a murky web between them. While everyone was confused, Henrietta stood up, regaining her composure. We can't sit here and panic. We have to do something. I'm going to investigate. And I think everyone in this group has important information that we need. Midge looked at Henrietta, sensing the determination in this girl. But will all the promises and determination be enough to overcome this terrifying mystery? Chapter 5. The Last Storm. The next day, as everyone tries to calm down and move on with their lives, a series of strange events begin to occur. Traces from the past are dragged out. Memories that have never been told. Midge cannot bear the feeling that secrets are about to be exposed, and the inevitable investigation will lead to a painful truth. Things start to unravel when Edward finally decides to speak up. But what he says is not what Midge thinks. Does he know everything that is going on? And is Edward the one who did the killing? The answers will be revealed in a tense confrontation, and the final outcome will change everything they believe. The group stands on the brink of truth. Chapter 5. The Last Storm continued. The dim light of the next morning shone through the window, but inside Midge, what she was feeling was not a peaceful morning. The feeling of confusion and anxiety never left. Even though they tried to face the truth that a case had happened right in this house, today was the day all the secrets would be revealed, and Midge could not avoid the truth anymore. As the group gathered in the living room, Lucy stood in the corner, her eyes pensive. She looked at everyone with a thoughtful expression, as if she was preparing to face something very big that they were not ready to accept. "We can't go on like this," Lucy said, her voice weary. "I know everyone is scared. I am too. But it's time we face the facts. The gardener's death wasn't an accident. And Edward, maybe he knows something we don't." Midge looked at Edward. He stood in the corner of the room, like a ghost, completely silent and calm. And that was what made Midge feel strange. A normal person would not be able to stay calm when their life was threatened, especially when faced with the death of a family member. But Edward was not like a normal person. This strange feeling kept haunting Midge, and she clearly felt that everything that happened had a connection that they could not see. Suddenly, Edward spoke, breaking the suffocating silence in the room. "You all must think I'm a murderer." "Right," he said, his voice not hurried, not anxious, just undeniable facts. Midge was startled. His words made the atmosphere even heavier. All eyes were on Edward. No one else said a word. Midge felt the tension making her feel like she was trapped in a dangerous game from which she could not retreat. "Edward, don't say that." Gerda spoke, but her voice was a little shaky, as if she was trying to protect something in the darkness. Edward smiled, but there was an indescribable mystery in that smile. "It's okay, Gerda. The truth always comes as a surprise, doesn't it?" Midge felt an invisible connection between Edward and the gardener's death. Why did he react like that? Why didn't he seem afraid or remorseful? The question kept circling in Midge's mind, and something slowly became clear. Was Edward hiding a big secret? Was the gardener's death a reminder that the past was never truly buried? Edward, why have you been silent for so long? Midge couldn't help but ask. She felt his intimidating presence, but she couldn't deny that he knew a lot of things. Edward sighed, stepping closer to Midge, his eyes piercing her. Midge, have you ever thought that what we know, what we think is true, is actually just fragments? We think we understand everything, but really, we are just lost in the darkness of ignorance. What do you mean? Midge asked, feeling like she was caught in a maze she couldn't get out of. Edward pointed to this table in the middle of the room, where old photos of Lucy's family were. These secrets are not mine, nor are they yours. We are all caught up in a game we do not understand. And the dead man, the gardener, he was part of that game. Midge felt her confusion growing. What are you implying? Do you know who killed him? Edward shook his head. I don't know, but I do know that this death is part of a larger plan that we cannot yet understand. The room fell silent. Everyone sat silently, thoughts swirling silently in their heads, no one daring to speak. Midge felt as if she were standing on the edge of a dark truth, just one step away from falling into the abyss. There was a gentle knock on the door. Everyone turned, and the door slowly opened. It was Henrietta, holding an envelope in her hand. Here, said Henrietta, the police just sent us a report about the gardener's death, and I think this is something we need to know. Midge took the envelope. Feeling its coldness, she opened it, her eyes glued to the words that had just been written. As she looked at the report, she saw a surprising detail, traces of a very rare poison, and it could only be found in a few specialized drugs that Edward had researched. A chill ran down Midge's spine. Everything she had suspected now seemed to be true. Edward was more than just a stranger in this story. He had a direct connection to death. But was he the killer? Or was he just a pawn in a larger game he had no control over? The answer may bring them all face to face with a truth much more terrible than they had imagined. Chapter 6. The Secret Revealed. Henrietta's words were like a strong shock. The group sat in silence, eyes on the report Midge held in her hands. None of them dared to speak immediately, because every detail in the report evoked a fear that they could not explain. Edward, is he involved in this death? Midge asked, her voice trembling. She knew that what she had just read was no coincidence. Those traces of poison could not have appeared by chance. And this truth forced her to face the inevitable question, was Edward the culprit? Edward didn't respond immediately. He just stood there, his eyes full of emotion, seemingly contemplating something deeper. I didn't kill him, he said finally, his voice unwavering but firm. But I know who killed him. Everyone in the room was shocked. No one expected Edward to admit such a thing. You knew who killed the gardener? Lucy asked, her voice filled with surprise and suspicion. Then why didn't you say so in the first place? Edward turned back to Lucy, his eyes cold. I didn't say anything, because I didn't want everyone to know that I knew. But now we're all in this spiral, and I can't stay silent any longer. If I don't say anything, it'll only get worse. So what are you going to do? Midge asked, unable to keep the disbelief out of her voice. Why don't you call the police? Because these are not people the police can easily deal with, Edward replied, the seriousness in his words adding to the heavy atmosphere in the room. We are dealing with a secret organization who will do anything to hide the truth. Midge felt stunned. The words opened a door to a world she had never imagined. A secret organization. It was too far-fetched, too unbelievable. But the truth Edward had just revealed made her unable to not take things seriously. Who are you talking about? Midge tried to keep her cool, but her heart was pounding, as if every word Edward said was making her nearly choke. Edward was silent for a moment. Then he looked straight at Midge, his eyes razor sharp. About people you never think about. People who always appear in the shadows, doing everything to maintain their power. I can't say too much right now, but I will show you everything. Just as Edward finished speaking, there was a sudden knock on the door. Everyone turned around, and when the door opened, a stranger walked in. Police know. It was a well-dressed man, but he didn't seem like an ordinary person. Sorry I'm late, the man said in a deep voice. I'm Miles, Edward's friend, and I think it's time we had a serious talk. Midge felt a chill spread through her body. Miles. Who was he? And why was he showing up now? When things were starting to get so complicated, why did Edward have friends like this? He came to help you understand things better, Edward said, as if he had guessed Midge's thoughts. Miles is the only one I can trust. Miles entered the room, closed the door behind him, and then he began to speak. As Edward said, you are dealing with a very powerful underground organization. These people are not simply murderers, but they can manipulate everything around us. And the gardener's death is just part of their grand plan. Midge couldn't help but be curious, though her fear was growing. Dark organization. What are you talking about? Miles looked at Midge with a serious look. This organization is called the Veil. They have existed for centuries, and their goal is to control everything that might affect their power. The gardener was no random victim. He knew too much about the Veil, and they killed him to keep the secret. Midge felt her heart sink. A secret organization that had existed for so long. This sounded like an unbelievable story. But Edward and now Miles were confirming it. So what is the goal of the Veil? Lucy asked, her voice somewhat worried, but also filled with determination. Power. Miles replied simply, absolute power. And we, the people here, may have been caught in their web without even knowing it. Midge looked around. They were all standing on the thin line between life and death. Secrets they thought they had buried were coming back to haunt the peace they had worked so hard to build. One thing is certain. What happened in the Hollow is just the beginning. The group will have to face even more terrible truths. But can they overcome it all? Or will they become the next prey in the Veil's game? Chapter 7. Pawns in the Game. Midge felt like she was being pulled into a vortex with no way out. Miles's words about the Veil and its connection to the gardener's death left her breathless. A secret organization that had existed for centuries, controlling everything in the shadows. And now, they had reached into the Hollow. She couldn't believe it was just beginning. The group sat in silence, no one daring to speak. Miles's words were like a storm that swept through their minds, tearing away any peace they had thought they had. All that remained was confusion and fear. Edward spoke first, his voice still eerily calm. "I know you don't believe me easily, but we've all been dragged into this game, and this game doesn't end easily. Everything you're seeing is just the surface. The gardener's death was just a warning." Miles nodded, as if he agreed with Edward completely. "That's right. The Veil never does anything without a reason. They control everything from the shadows, and the people in this house, you, all have a role in their plans." Midge couldn't help but feel anxious. What was happening to the world? Why were people like them? Ordinary people, caught up in such a terrible story. She felt like she was trapped in a maze with no way out. "So, what do we do?" Lucy finally spoke, breaking the heavy silence. She looked at Edward and Miles. Her eyes filled with worry. "We can't just sit here and wait to die." Edward looked at her, his eyes sharp, as if he had been preparing for this question. "We can't simply try to escape. The Veil allows no one to escape their control. But if we want to live, if we want to have a chance against them, we have to start looking for the clues they leave behind." Miles sighed softly. "You can't do this alone. I know you think you can. But the Veil has its links everywhere, in every walk of life. They could be right beside you without you even knowing it." Midge felt like she was playing a game she hadn't chosen to play. She looked around, her eyes searching for help from the others in the group. But everyone seemed lost in their own thoughts. No one had an answer. No one knew what to do. "We need to get to the bottom of the Veil," Midge said, determined to find out the truth. "We have to find a way to break their network." "Yes," Edward said, his voice no longer as cold as before. "And I will help you. But remember, every step we take brings us closer to danger." In that moment, something changed inside Midge. She no longer felt like an outsider. She was caught up in this story, and whether she wanted to or not, she couldn't back out. Chapter 8, Secret Plan. Everyone returned to the house, a heavy atmosphere hanging over the rooms. Midge couldn't stop thinking about what Miles and Edward had said. The Veil wasn't just an organization, but a dark power, controlling everything they couldn't see. "So where do we start?" Midge asked, her eyes never leaving Edward. "We need to find their weak points." "We start with the people they've controlled," Edward replied. "I know some of the people in the Veil have surfaced over the years. We'll have to follow those leads." Midge nodded. "So who can help us?" Henrietta stepped forward, her eyes shining with determination. "I think I can help. I have some connections in the art world, and I know that many of them are connected to the Veil." "Really?" Lucy asked, her eyes sparkling with hope. "Are you sure you can do that?" Henrietta nodded. "If they really have influence in the art world, I will find important clues. But we must act quickly, because the Veil is not easy to defeat." Midge felt a strange sense of encouragement. They weren't just sitting around worrying anymore. They were starting to plan their course of action. Yet, Midge knew that every step they took would bring more danger. "We need to stick together," Midge said, determined. "We can't let fear control us." Miles looked at her, his eyes filled with admiration. "Yes, Midge, it's the only way we can do it." Chapter 9, The Dangerous Road. The next day, the group puts their plan into action. Midge, Henrietta, Edward, and the rest split up to investigate various leads. Midge and Henrietta will visit people in the art world who they suspect are involved with the Veil. Edward will search for information on the organization's documents and assets, while Lucy and Miles will search for traces of the Veil's past. As Midge stepped out of the house, she felt like she was standing on the threshold of a completely different world. Everything she had thought was normal now seemed blurry, as if she were walking down a foggy road with no idea what lay ahead. But she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't go back. Everyone in this group had been drawn into a game they couldn't back out of. And the world they were about to face was a dangerous storm, from which only the strongest would survive. Chapter 10. The Buried Truth. The group springs into action, each doing their best to uncover the truth. But as they get closer to their goal, they realize that the truth isn't always easy to accept. Each secret they uncover leads them to a terrible truth. And as things begin to unfold, they are faced with an inevitable choice. Chapter 10. The Buried Truth continued. The day passed in a state of anxiety and tension. Midge and Henrietta went to a small art exhibition where they hoped to find connections to the Veil. But the truth behind the curtain of the art world was not as simple as they thought. Henrietta stopped in front of a large painting called The New Road, a picture of a deserted street in dim light. This painting, I saw it in another exhibition a few years ago, but I didn't think much of it then, Henrietta said, her eyes shining with memory. Midge also looked at the painting, feeling that there was something familiar but couldn't explain it. Why did she have such a strange feeling? Henrietta, can you think of who is behind this painting? Who owns it? Henrietta shook her head. This painting, it seems, is part of an art project I was involved in before. But the people behind it are connected to a very secretive group of artists. We need to get to know them better. Midge senses that this painting is more than just a work of art. It could be a sign, a reminder from the Veil. They are playing a dangerous game. And only those smart enough to read the hidden signs in these works of art. Just then, a man walked in, attracting attention. He was wearing a black suit. His appearance was cold. His face was not very pleasant. His eyes stopped on Midge and Henrietta, as if he was evaluating them. A feeling of unease rose in Midge again, and she felt that something was wrong. "Excuse me, what are you looking for?" he asked, his voice low but filled with suspicion. Henrietta stood up, smiling naturally. "We were just admiring the artwork." "This is a very special painting," she said, trying to keep her composure. But Midge noticed her hands were shaking slightly. The man did not respond immediately. He just stared at the painting, his eyes seemingly knowing all the answers. Then he spoke slowly. "This painting has its own history. You probably don't know that it was once part of a secret project, an art project that only a few in the art world knew about." Midge felt her heart pounding harder, as if a fire was burning inside her. "A secret project?" she asked, trying to hide her nervousness. "That's true," the man replied, his eyes cold. "But the people who participated in this project are not ordinary artists. They are members of an organization, and they always have their own goals. You should be careful with what you learn." Henrietta and Midge exchanged worried glances. Midge felt a strange fear rising in her heart. This man was definitely not innocent, and he was trying to warn them of something they could not have foreseen. "Who are you?" Midge asked, her voice trembling slightly, but she was determined not to let fear get the better of her. The man chuckled, but didn't answer her question. Instead, he stepped back, as if he had completed some task. "Just remember, sometimes the truth isn't always what you want to find." He turned and walked away, leaving Midge and Henrietta standing there in confusion. Neither could quite comprehend what had just happened, but they both knew one thing. Whatever they were trying to solve was about to get more dangerous. Chapter 11. Breakthrough. As Midge returned home, a sense of unease and uncertainty overwhelmed her. What they had just experienced left her unable to stop and think about everything that had happened. The Veil was more than just a secret organization. It was something deeper, controlling even the people they thought were their friends. "It's time," Midge said to herself. "We have to face the truth." The group met in the Hollow's living room, and this time, no one was as calm as before. Each had their own doubts and worries, but they all knew one thing: they could not back down. "We've come too far to stop," Edward said, his gaze still cold. "We're not just dealing with the Veil, but with a global system of power." Henrietta continued, "That's right. They don't just lurk in the shadows. They control areas we can't imagine. Art, politics, finance, they're everywhere." Midge felt like everything was falling apart around her. She didn't know who she could trust in this group, but she knew that once she entered this war, there was no turning back. "We have to find a way to stop them," Midge said, her voice filled with determination. "But how?" Lucy asked, her expression showing concern. "We have nothing but scattered pieces." So, "We have to find the center of the Veil," Midge replied, "and we need to do it quickly." The group began to plan their next steps. Everyone had their own tasks, but they all knew that the most important thing was to stay united, because if they didn't, everything they had done would be for nothing. Chapter 12. The Final Road. The group prepares for their journey to learn more about the Veil. Midge has no doubt that this journey will be not only a physical challenge, but also a psychological battle. Every step they take will be fraught with dangers they never imagined. This trip will be the final confrontation. But can they lift the veil of secrecy of the Veil? Or will they be the next pawns in this bloody game? Chapter 13. The Dark Gate. As Midge's group prepared to leave the Hollow, the atmosphere in the house became tense. Everyone sensed that this trip would be a major turning point, one that could change their lives forever. Midge, Henrietta, Edward, and the rest decided not to turn back, not to give up, no matter how terrifying the truth might be. "We will have to go deep into the darkness of the Veil, where all the secrets are hidden," Edward said, his voice low and determined. "There is no turning back. It will happen quickly. If we don't find their core, we won't be able to get out." Henrietta looked at Midge, her eyes filled with worry, but also determination. "I am ready, but I hope we find a way to defeat them. Things can't go on like this forever." Midge nodded, sensing the determination in Henrietta's words. She no longer felt the same unease as before, but instead, a strong determination. We will break this cycle, no matter what the cost. The group went outside, got into the waiting car, and prepared to leave. Midge took one last look at the old house, which held memories and secrets that she could not forget now. This would be the last time they would be here, at least for the time being. Chapter 14. Hidden Secret. Their journey led them to an old mansion, deep in the woods, which, according to the information they gathered, was the heart of the Vale. The mansion looked like a ruined castle, with moss-covered walls and heavy black iron gates, as if it had been abandoned for centuries. Standing before it, Midge felt her heart tighten. She could sense an invisible threat looming all around her. "We're here," Edward said, his voice no longer as calm as before. "From now on, things will never be the same again." The group entered the mansion, where the dim light from the flickering oil lamps made the space mysterious and haunting. Each of their footsteps seemed to imprint themselves on the cold ground, creating strange echoes in the quiet space. Suddenly, a large door opened, and a man stood waiting for them. He was dressed in black, with silver hair and razor-sharp eyes. "Hello, my friends," he said, his voice low and full of meaning. "We knew you would come." "Who are you?" Midge asked, feeling like she was facing a predator, unable to avoid it. "We are the keepers of the balance," the man replied, pride in his eyes. "And you, like everyone else, have been caught up in this game." The group stood still. No one said anything, but they all felt an indescribable tension. The Vale could truly control everything. And now, they were facing the people who had been ruling this world from the shadows. "So, what are you here for?" the man asked, his voice soft as an invitation. "We came to end it all," Edward replied, the hardness in his voice more evident than ever. "We can't let you keep running things like this." The man smiled, but there was no joy in his smile. "I'm afraid you don't understand the situation. You can't simply turn this around. The Vale is too big, too powerful a system. You are all pawns in a game you can't win." Midge felt a chill rise inside her. She realized that no matter how much they fought, the Vale would always have a way to control them. But part of her refused to accept this. She couldn't let them continue to rule, couldn't let the truth be buried forever. Chapter 15. The Final Confrontation. "We can't just stand here and accept defeat," Midge said, her voice ringing with determination. "We have to beat them." The group stood there, facing the leaders of the Vale. A fierce battle was about to begin, and they knew that this would be a life-or-death battle. "So, you want to fight?" the man asked coldly, as if considering their every reaction. "Prepare yourselves. The Vale is not something you can break easily." A loud explosion rang out from within the mansion, and immediately, everyone rushed into battle. Each member of the group fought with all their might, but they knew that their opponents were not simply weaklings. Midge charged towards the man who had just spoken to them, while Edward and Henrietta fought the others. The group seemed to have been caught in a storm of no return, but they could not stop it. A fierce battle was taking place, and only one of them would survive. But the biggest question remains, can they defeat the Vale, or will they become the last pawns in this bloody game? Chapter 16. Battle of Life and Death. The sounds of battle echoed throughout the mansion, like waves crashing against the shore. Midge felt her body burn as she faced the cold man she knew was a vital part of the Veil. Every blow, every move he made felt like she was hitting an invisible wall. But she couldn't stop. Not now. "We will not lose," Midge shouted, closing her eyes and charging forward. She felt the strength in every muscle, the determination in every step. She could not let it end here. Her group had come too far, sacrificed too much, and she could not let go. The man opposite her only smiled faintly, then burst out laughing contemptuously. "You guys are really resilient, but you don't understand. The Veil has prepared everything long ago. You can't win against us." Midge didn't answer, just kept attacking. Punch after punch, kick after kick. In her mind, the images of her friends, the people they had lost, and what they had been through, all acted as a driving force that kept her from stopping. She was no longer a stranger in this fight. She was part of the fight for freedom and justice. At the same time, Edward and Henrietta were also fighting relentlessly. Henrietta quickly gained the upper hand with her agility and finesse, while Edward showed no weakness at all. Each of his strikes were accurate and powerful. But they knew that no matter how hard they fought, if they could not find the control center of the Veil, it would all be meaningless. The group knows that fighting the members of the Veil is only part of the battle. They must quickly break the web of power that the organization has built up over the years. Every time they take down one enemy, a new one appears, like an endless darkness that cannot be erased. "We need to go deeper," Henrietta shouted as she defeated one of the mansion's powerful guards. "The center of the Veil isn't here. That's where we need to go." Midge looked at Henrietta, her eyes filled with determination. "Then let's go. Don't let them stop us. Go." The group quickly made their way into the deeper levels of the mansion. They walked through long hallways, dark and silent rooms. Each step seemed to bring them closer to an undeniable truth. Midge sensed that something was waiting for them ahead, something that would change everything. Finally, they came to a large room where the heart of the Veil was hidden. A large table on which were complex technological devices, along with charts and maps linking the pieces of the underworld that the organization controlled. This is where they have to find a way to break. Chapter 17. The truth unfolds. As Midge entered the room, a secret door behind her opened automatically. A man, whom she had never seen before, stepped out of the shadows. His face was completely calm, as if he had been waiting for them to appear. "Welcome to the control center of the Veil," the man said, his voice calm. "I am the one who led you all here." Midge felt the coldness in his words. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "It's time you knew the truth," the man replied, his eyes showing no fear. "I am the one behind it all. And I created the Veil?" Midge was shocked, unable to believe what she had just heard. "You are the founder of the Veil." "That's right," he replied, nodding confidently. "This organization dates back to the early days of the last century, when my co-founders and I realized that in order to maintain power, we had to control everything from the shadows. Government, finance, art, all of it had to be under our control." Midge felt a surge of anger rise inside her. "What right do you think you have to control people's lives? People like us. We are not pawns in your game. Yes, you are not pawns, the man replied, his eyes flashing. But you have chosen this path. You came here seeking the truth, and now you must face the ultimate truth. Midge felt like she was standing between a cliff. She realized that no matter what they did, a part of the veil would always be so, always influencing everything. But no, she couldn't give up. She was too close to the truth. There was no turning back. We won't let you go on, Midge said, her voice firm. Whatever it takes, we'll break it all. The group begins to advance, entering a final confrontation with the man and the organization he represents. This battle is not just a physical one, but a battle with the deepest parts of each person's soul. As the light shines into the darkness, they will face the truth of a world they never imagined. The final confrontation begins, and this will be a battle to the death, where no one can predict the outcome. Chapter 18. The decisive confrontation. The group stood, their eyes on the man, the founder of the veil, the man who had spent his life controlling everything from the shadows. Midge could feel the tension in the air, as if a storm were brewing. They had been through many trials, but never had they faced such a formidable foe. This man was more than just a part of the veil. He was the source of it all. So, are you ready to break the veil? The man asked, his voice filled with arrogance. For what? To save people who you don't know have been controlled by us all along. You know, you are just pieces in this game, and you can't change the rules. Midge clenched her fists, a sense of determination rising within her. She knew he was partly right, but that didn't mean they had to give in. They might not be able to change the world, but they could fight for what they believed was right. We can't let you continue to manipulate people's lives, Midge said, her eyes never leaving the man. If we don't stand up now, no one else will. Henrietta stepped forward, her eyes sharp and determined. We have fought too long to stop. He has controlled too much, but now we can end it. The man chuckled. You may think so, but you will see. It is too late. The veil cannot be broken just because a few people have a little determination. Tosho. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the room became tense. The surrounding technology began to glow, and the screens displayed complex maps and diagrams, all of them linked to the areas and powers that the veil controlled. Midge could sense the danger of these devices. One small mistake could cause everything to collapse. They were not just fighting this man, but the entire system he had created. We have to destroy all these links, Midge said, her voice firm. If we don't stop the veil system, we can't win. That's right, Edward added. We have to shut down all the systems and stop any connections they're controlling. But the man was undeterred. You may try, he said, but I fear you will not live to see the results. As he finished speaking, the doors around the room opened. Dozens of strangers entered, all dressed in black and bearing the symbol of the veil. Midge sensed danger as they approached, but she did not back down. We can't wait any longer, Midge ordered. We have to do it now. Henrietta, Edward, and Midge charged into battle. Henrietta quickly dispatched the first two, using her agility to attack and defend. Edward was no slouch, using powerful punches and precise strikes to take down his opponents. Midge, though not a professional fighter, had the determination and courage to defeat each of her opponents. However, they knew that these people were just soldiers, and they were not the main target. The man leading the veil was still observing them from afar, as if he was waiting for the right moment to act. "It's time," Midge said, fighting, her eyes on the control screens. "We have to destroy the control center now." But Midge and Edward rushed into the control area, trying to shut down the systems. But as soon as they got close, a sharp sound rang out, signaling that something had been activated. Midge realized that the man had planned for this situation all along. An automatic defense system had been activated to protect the control room. A blinding flash of light shot out from the screens, aimed at the group. Midge jumped out of harm's way, but Edward and Henrietta were hit and fell to the floor. Midge felt a surge of fear, but she didn't stop. She had to do this for everyone. "No!" Midge screamed, running to the controls, trying to figure out how to cancel the connections. Finally, with a powerful push on the keyboard, Midge shut down the control system, and all the screens and devices in the room went dark. There was a loud noise, as if a giant machine was being destroyed. Midge felt a distinct change in the space, as if a huge weight had been lifted. But the man stood there, silent, his eyes filled with hatred. "You may have destroyed part of the veil, but it will still exist," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "And you, in the end, will become pawns in a larger game." Midge didn't reply. She knew the battle wasn't over, but one thing was certain: they had won their first major victory. They had broken a part of the veil, and this time, they wouldn't stop until they destroyed the entire system. Chapter 19. New Steps. The group left the mansion, victorious but not relieved. They knew that, although they had taken down a portion of the veil, the war was far from over. What they had done was only the first step in a long journey. Midge looked back at the ruined mansion where the group had fought so relentlessly. "We've made a start," she said, "but we have so much more to do." And so, their journey does not end here. Every step they take next will be a fight not only for their survival, but for freedom and justice for all those controlled by the veil. They knew that the war would continue, but at least they had won an important victory, one that they would never forget. Chapter 20. The Pieces Remain. Midge looked out the window of the moving car, the woods gradually receding behind. The group had just left the mansion, where they had fought to the death to destroy a part of the veil. But in Midge's heart, a feeling of incompleteness was always present. This battle had only just begun. Although they had a small victory, it did not mean that they were finished with the veil. Surely there would be more terrible things waiting. "We've had some success," Edward said, sitting across from Midge, his eyes still shining with determination. "But as we've seen, it's only a small part of their network. The veil is still here, in the shadows, and we haven't completely defeated it yet." Midge nodded. "I know, but today we destroyed a major part of their plan. If we continue to find the remaining pieces, we can stop them." Henrietta sat beside Midge, silently looking out the window. "I don't think the veil will let us off that easily. They won't let us go without paying the price." She didn't say anything more, but the determined look in her eyes showed that she understood that every next step would be filled with risks. The group began to discuss their next plan. They knew they would need to act quickly, before the veil could react. They were facing not only powerful enemies, but also a system that had existed for centuries and had pervasive influence on every aspect of society. "We have to keep hunting down the key figures in this organization," Edward said. "There are people in the veil who will never reveal themselves so easily. We need to find out the secrets, and that will be the deciding piece." Midge felt the pressure mounting, but she refused to let herself fall. For so long, she had dreamed of a world free from darkness and shadowy powers, but now she realized that to achieve that, they would have to make great sacrifices and face unforeseeable challenges. She thought about all they had been through, and her resolve grew stronger. "We need to find the people inside the veil. They are the people this organization has been using, and they can give us important information," Midge said, her eyes shining with determination. "We will find out who is behind it all and make them pay." Chapter 21. New Bond. The group decides to split into smaller teams to seek information from various sources. Midge and Henrietta will continue their investigation into the art world, where they have found important clues about the veil's connections. Edward will investigate financial institutions and political connections, where the veil may have great influence. And finally, Lucy will try to contact former members of opposition organizations who have faced the veil but have never spoken out publicly. Midge felt nervous, but she knew that this was a necessary step to clear things up. Henrietta accompanied her to another art exhibition, where there were works that they had previously suspected were related to the veil. Every meeting, every encounter with artists in this world was a challenge. They did not share information easily, but if you looked closely, the signs left by the veil could be easily recognized. Just one right question, one subtle look, and the secrets would be revealed. As they approached a small cafe to meet their suspected suspect, Midge sensed a strange feeling. The woman sitting across from them had her eyes half closed, as if she were waiting for something. She reached up and touched the ring on her finger, as if seeking advice. It was a small gesture, but it held so much meaning. Midge couldn't be sure, but she had a feeling that this was the person they were looking for. "We have important information to share with you," Midge said softly, but her eyes never left the other woman. The woman looked up, saw Midge and Henrietta, and then smiled slightly. "You've come to the right place. But you must understand, when it comes to the veil, no one is safe." Midge didn't answer, just looked at the woman, waiting. Finally, the woman said, "We can help you, but the price will be very high. If you can't bear it, then it's best not to take another step." Henrietta looked at Midge, her eyes filled with determination. "We are ready." The woman smiled mysteriously. "Then follow me. I will lead you to where the truth awaits." Midge and Henrietta stood up and followed the woman out of the cafe. They knew this could lead to a new, risky journey, but they couldn't back down. They had come too far to turn back. Chapter 22. The Dark Road. The journey continues. Midge and Henrietta and the woman walk through dark streets, through deserted neighborhoods where light never penetrates. What they will face are not ordinary people, but people who have made the darkness their home. The deeper they go, the colder Midge feels around them. She doesn't know where she is going, but she knows that this is the path they must take to completely break the veil. At the same time, Edward and Lucy also conduct their own investigation. The group knows that this war will not be just a normal confrontation. This is a war between invisible forces who have controlled society in the shadows, and now they will be the ones to break that darkness, even if it means sacrificing everything. Midge felt her heart pounding, but she couldn't stop. They were too close, and though the road ahead was dangerous, she would never turn back. With determination in her heart, she steps forward into the darkness, where the dark truth awaits. Chapter 23. New Ending. The group finally reached the place the woman had led them to, a desolate area far from the city, like another world. It was an old villa, hidden behind dense trees and abandoned gardens, where light rarely penetrated. A cold feeling pervaded the surrounding space, as if the whole place had been long forgotten. Midge and Henrietta followed the woman inside. The old wooden door swung open, and they stepped into a large, silent space, the only sound being their footsteps echoing in the empty room. Large paintings hung on the walls covered in dust and cobwebs, as if time had stood still here. This is where we find out the truth, the woman said, her voice soft but filled with a strange determination. I helped you get here, here, and now you will have to face what the veil doesn't want you to know. Midge sensed the tension in the air. She and Henrietta looked at each other, both knowing that this was a crucial moment, one that could decide everything. They followed the woman into an inner room, where a large desk was lined with documents, maps, and open electronic files. These documents contain all the information you need, the woman said, pointing to the table. You will see that the people behind the veil are not just shadowy masters, but also people who hold great power in this world. They not only influence policy, but also control all areas from politics, finance, to media and the arts. Midge stepped closer and opened a document. She saw names she hadn't expected, people who had been involved in running major power bases. This was the truth she had been searching for, but also the most terrifying truth she could have imagined. The Veil was more than just a secret organization. They were a force that controlled many aspects of society. But why us? Midge asked, looking up at the woman. Why do they want us to know all this? The woman bowed her head, then looked up, her eyes sparkling mysteriously. Because you are not like the others. You are strong enough to face the truth. They know you will not stop. And that is why they want to destroy you. A cold feeling rose in Midge's stomach, but she didn't allow herself to worry. So, what do we do next? The woman smiled. Next, you will be faced with a final choice. You will have to decide whether or not you want to destroy the veil completely. But remember, once you embark on this path, there is no turning back. Midge looked at Henrietta, fear and anxiety starting to flood back. But deep down, she knew there was no turning back. She had come too far and knew too much to give up. We have to do this, Henrietta said, her eyes shining with determination. It's the only way, Midge nodded. then turned back to the woman. "We're ready." Chapter 24. The Final Confrontation. The next day, Midge, Henrietta, and the rest of the group put their final plan into action. The group planned to destroy the entire structure of the Veil, from its power networks to the databases it controlled. They knew this was the riskiest move, but if they didn't act now, the Veil would continue to exist, continuing to control and manipulate the lives of millions. Edward takes the lead in searching for weaknesses in the organization's database, while Lucy begins to approach individuals who can assist them from within political and financial organizations. The team works tirelessly, day and night, knowing that this is their only chance to completely end the Veil. In a closed room where the team is working, Midge feels her heart beating faster than ever. She is facing a mission that cannot be stopped. They have broken part of the Veil, but now they must destroy the organization at its roots. And then, with all the final pieces of the plan in place, Midge felt ready. She looked at the screen in front of her, where the final instructions were appearing. "This is the time," Midge said, her voice low but firm. "We will do this." The group bowed their heads, each knowing that even if they lost everything, they had to continue fighting. And no matter what, they would never let the Veil continue to control this world. And thus the final battle begins. Chapter 25. The truth is revealed. Midge and her team's plan is ready. They have broken through part of the Veil system, but now everything depends on one decisive move. Midge and her team have worked tirelessly to reach the weak points in the organization, and now it is time for them to face the secrets that the Veil has kept hidden for a long time. Midge stood before the screen, her hands shaking but her heart filled with determination. The lines of code on the screen were not just numbers and data, but keys that would unlock the door to the heart of the organization's power. Every keystroke carried a heavy burden. "We need to hack into their global network," Edward said, his eyes never leaving the screen. "If we can take out their central servers, we can stop the entire plan. But to do that, we need to access the main security gates," Henrietta warned, her eyes sharp. "This isn't a normal system. They'll detect us in seconds." Midge took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving the screen. "I know, but we don't have time. If we don't do it now, everything we've done will be for nothing. Be prepared." The group began typing in codes and performing complex operations to penetrate the security system. Midge felt the tension rising by the minute, but she couldn't stop. This was her only chance to end it all. The room fell silent until red words appeared on the screen. "The system has been compromised." Midge looked at the screen, her heart pounding. Everything was going according to plan, but it was also a huge risk. They had breached the first layer of security, but there were many challenges ahead. "We have to shut down all the main servers quickly," Midge said, her voice full of determination, "or they'll have time to react." Edward, with his patience and technical expertise, quickly found the weak points in the system. "I can reach the servers remotely, but it will take us a few more minutes to completely disable them." Meanwhile, Henrietta and Lucy continued to guard the room, their eyes constantly on the lookout for any signs of trouble. Midge could feel the tension building. She didn't know how much time they had left, but she knew that every second could be vital. Only a few minutes passed, but to Midge, they seemed like an eternity. Suddenly, an alert sounded on the screen. System is being scanned. We have been detected. Midge felt like everything was falling apart. They know. We don't have much time. Edward, his eyes shining. I have a way. Let me handle it. With a decisive click, a series of codes began to run across the screen. Midge could feel the heat spreading through the room. The Veil's systems were being slowly erased, but they still had the final steps to go through. And then, finally, the clang of the system going offline rang out in the room, bringing a sigh of relief to Midge and the group. The entire system was disabled. They had done it. Chapter 26, The Endless Fight. The group sat back, all eyes on the screen. Midge felt a hollowness spread through her. They had taken down a part of the Veil. But was this the end? We succeeded in destroying the Veil's control center. But the organization is too large, Midge said, her voice low. There's no way a group like us can completely destroy them. Edward nodded, looking back at the screen. That's right. The Veil doesn't stop here. But we've done something no one expected. We've taken away their greatest power. Now, they won't be able to manipulate the world so easily. Midge felt a glimmer of hope. So what do we do next? Henrietta stood up, her eyes shining with new determination. We won't stop here. If there is any more of the Veil left, we will continue to find it and destroy it. This is a fight we cannot give up. Lucy also stood up, smiling gently. We have destroyed the most important part of this organization, and the world will no longer be under their control. Although the war is not over, we have done something great. Midge looked at each of the group and felt the strength of their unity. They had overcome many challenges, faced unimaginable dangers. And although this war was not over, they had proven that. As long as they stood up, fought, and did not give up, everything could change. And though there are still unknowns in the darkness, Midge and her team will continue to move forward, finding the remaining pieces until the Veil completely collapses. The war is not over yet, but they have won the first step. They made the first big step, and the world would never be the same again. Chapter 27. The Remaining Traces. Midge sat in the conference room, her eyes scanning the map and the latest documents the team had collected. Although they had broken through part of the Veil, she knew that it was only a temporary victory. The Veil was never simple, and the people behind this organization would not accept defeat easily. Midge couldn't stop thinking about the traces they had left in the underworld. We need to strike at the rest of the Veil. We can't give them time to recover, Edward said, his eyes shining with determination. We've taken down the control center, but their systems don't stop there. We have to find the remaining links. Midge nodded, sensing the tension in the air. Every next step would lead them into more dangerous territory. But she couldn't stop. So what do we do next? We need to get to the bottom of their financial organization. Henrietta spoke up. The financial people hold the real power in the Veil. If we can penetrate their financial system, we can destroy every remaining base of this organization. Lucy sat beside him, thought for a moment, and then said, if we can find those financial tycoons, we'll be able to cut off the money and power supply of the Veil, but they definitely won't reveal themselves easily. Yes, Midge said, her eyes cold, but we cannot stand still. Every hour that passes, the veil will gain strength again, and we cannot let that happen. The group discussed their plans in detail and began to plot their next steps. Midge knew they were on a dead end, with every step fraught with danger. But once they had chosen to fight, they could not stop. Chapter 28. Facing reality. The next day, the group goes into action. Midge and Henrietta continue their investigation into the art world, trying to find people who might be connected to the veil. They go to exhibitions, meet artists, and follow the small clues the organization has left in works of art. Meanwhile, Edward and Lucy continue to try to infiltrate the financial system of the veil. They use sophisticated hacking tools to access the organization's financial data and quickly find important connections. But it's not easy. They have been discovered. "We're being followed," Edward said, his voice strained. "They've discovered our location. We have to finish this job now," Midge said without hesitation. "No matter the cost, we have to bring them to justice." Chapter 29. The last step. Midge felt a strange feeling as they neared the end of their journey. They had faced the veil, fought every part of their system, and now it seemed like everything was coming to an end. But Midge couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't achieved complete victory. "We're almost there," Midge said, her eyes filled with determination. "The veil's financial system is collapsing, and there's just one last piece left to break." Edward looked at her, his eyes shining. "Yes, but we also have to deal with the people behind it. Not just the veil anymore, but those who have used this organization to control the world." Midge nodded, feeling the weight of Edward's words. They weren't just fighting an organization. They were fighting an invisible system of power, and every step closer meant a greater sacrifice. The group continued to move forward, facing the dangers that awaited them. But one thing Midge knew for sure: no matter how long this war lasted, they would not stop. They had entered a battle with no way back, and no matter the cost, they would not give up. Chapter 30. The New Road. When the investigation finally ended, the veil had collapsed completely. The masterminds, the ones who had manipulated power, had finally been brought to light. But Midge felt a strange emptiness. Their fight was over, but she knew that their lives would never be the same again. "We did it," Henrietta said, her voice soft but proud. "We destroyed the veil and freed all those they controlled." Midge nodded, but in her heart, part of the fight still lingered. "Yes, but we have awakened other monsters as well. The system of power has been broken, but this world still has many unresolved issues." The group stood together, looking forward. They had won, but they knew that this war would never truly end. Traces of the veil would still exist in this world, and once the wise eyes realized the truth, they would have to continue fighting. Midge felt a glimmer of hope in her heart. They were starting a new path, one where the world was no longer ruled by darkness. And no matter how difficult the journey ahead was, she knew that they would never give up.